Good morning and welcome to San Juan County Council's Tuesday, September 29th, 2020 meeting. We'll now call the meeting to order. Would all rise for the flag salute. Ingrid, you're already up. And Ingrid, if you wouldn't mind leading us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almost threw me off there.
You too.
All right. Well, thank you and good morning. It's a beautiful day.
Flag of the United States of America and to the
To me. All right, so now we will begin our meeting as we have this year with our Coast Salish acknowledgement. It's an honor to be able to present this. Let us acknowledge that we reside on the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people. We've taken care of these lands since we do not have any excused absences. I see Mr. Watson and Mr. Stevens. So are there any, question for council. Yesterday afternoon, a recruitment justification form came in from the ER&R department. It was not on the agenda. Is that something you'd like to consider today?
Yeah, I just put it underneath number 11 with the other one.
Okay. Mr. Stevens, are you okay with that?
That's fine.
Okay. We will add that in the day.
Number 11 is actually after 1.
Sorry, 11.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions with the agenda?
James Miley. I'm calling on my cell phone because I'm monitoring the council meeting on Skype.
Eileen?
Oh no, I'm muted.
No, we hear you.
I hear you, Mylene. Thank you. All right. Anything, Mr. Thomas, was there a need for an executive session today? I guess we've added it, as well as the closed session, correct? Anything else for the agenda?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
All right, Mr. Stevens, or Mr. Stevens, Watson, have you had a chance to look at the minutes?
Yep.
Yes.
If so, I would entertain a motion for approval.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the minutes for the San Juan County Council meeting of September 15th, 2020.
Second.
You have a motion and a second for approval of the September 15th, 2020 minutes. Any questions or comments? Without seeing all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 3-0.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the San Juan County Council minutes for the meeting of September 24th, 2020.
Second.
You have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes for September 24th, 2020. Any questions or comments? Without seeing, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Sorry, Ms. Stevens, did you say aye? I apologize. Thank you. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much. Have you both had an opportunity to look at the consent agenda?
Yep.
Yep.
If there's not any questions, I'd entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda for the San Juan County Council meeting of Tuesday, September 29th, 2020.
Second.
You have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda for Tuesday, September 29th, 2020. Any questions or comments? Without seeing, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much. Is there any correspondence? I don't see any, but is there any just to check one time?
Nope.
Nope.
All right. Moving on, I have 3 people on the line. We do have a public hearing coming up. If you're planning on providing comments on the public hearing, if you could hold it till that period, that would be great. If not, we have 3 folks on there. The first person, I'm going to unmute and read the last 4 digits of your phone number. 6067. Mr. Hiller, Henry Hiller. Do you have any public comment? If you do, please state your name and you have 3 minutes.
I do, thank you. My name is Melora Hiller, and I live at 69 Goat Roper Road on Lopez Island. I'm on the board of Housing Lopez, a nonprofit dedicated to addressing the severe shortage of rental housing affordable to working people on Lopez. And on behalf of the board, I'm writing in response to the recommendations by the Housing Advisory Council regarding the 2020 funding awards. We believe that the home fund in general can be most effective when it serves as a final funding for new projects. This was the original purpose of the program as we understand it. And as a policy matter, we believe that the county should focus on fully funding projects that are ready to go. Partial funding delays completion of new housing and most likely requires multiple year awards for the same project, exposing them to higher construction costs and uncertainty. The Advisory Council recommendation to fully fund the top 3 rated projects commits $1,082,000 of the budgeted $1,200,000. All of those existing projects, 2 of which were funded by Home last year, and none of them would add a single new affordable housing unit in 2021 for San Juan County. The council then recommends exceeding the budgeted amount to partially fund the 2 remaining projects. Partial funding of these 2 projects by itself would produce no new affordable housing from the 2020 funding round either. The result is a funding recommendation that exceeds the budgeted amount by $582,000 and yet produces no new affordable housing. If the county has the resources to stretch beyond its 2020 funding budget, it is much more effective use of public funds to fully fund the next most ready and fundable project that will produce new housing in 2021. What this recommendation means for Fish Bay Cottages, our Housing Lopez's first project, means that Housing Lopez would have to reapply in 2021 and would delay the project another year. That delay exposes the project to increased construction costs and would be discouraging to the 160 Lopez community members that have donated and demonstrated their commitment to developing affordable rental housing on Lopez. We stand to lose our position in the production schedule of our site contractor and unit fabricator. The terms of the land use covenant agreement with the county require that the development of the site, which we bought from the county, the development of the site commence no later than April 2021. A delay in funding will not only jeopardize the project, but severely damage the viability of Housing Lopez itself. Most importantly, 6 hardworking Lopez families would have to wait another year for decent, safe, and sanitary housing that they can afford. We already have many requests to be on the waiting list that we haven't even opened yet. Families are desperate for housing now, more than ever with the COVID pandemic. We believe that fully funding ready projects with home funds for the year they will start construction is a better approach in the long run. If the county truly has the ability to fund up to $1.782 million in the 2020 round and knows that it will be asked to complete the funding of a project a second round in 2021, why not fully fund that project in 2020? With a budget as high as $1.
We have 3 minutes for this. Is it? Can you be close to wrapping up?
Yes, I can. I will just say in summary that we would urge the county to stretch beyond its home funding for 2020 to fully fund Fish Bay Cottages. The partial funding recommendation by the Housing Advisory Committee does nothing to produce new housing in 2021, and we think that this will unnecessarily delay the production of 6 new units. And Fish Bay Cottages is ready to go, and we look forward to housing 6 families in new affordable rental housing next fall. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. The next person is, I think, a reporter. Mr. Lill, are you just listening? Oh, sorry, Minor, I cut you off. All right. And the last one I have is Mr. Freilich. I assume you're here for the public hearing, is that correct? All right. We have two public comments that are brought in. They're both regarding Prune Alley in East Sound on Orcas. The first one is from Mr. Fred Klein regarding an article that was written in the Orcosian. I think council have seen all of this. Basically, it's questioning the trees being removed in front of Island Market, the design of the intersections, and the disappointment with EPRC in supporting the county project. I'm sure Mr. Klein has many other things he'd like to say. And we see that we've had a bunch of emails from him.
Yep, seen it.
Yep. Yep, I can't, she can't.
In my office.
Excuse me. The next comment is coming from, and I apologize, George Zweibel, sent in to Sunday to all of council. Again, full-time residents of Orcas live and shop in East Sound. Respectfully request the county to delay implementation of the currently planned Prune Alley project in light of growing groundswell of opposition on the websites. It's clear that EPRC isn't currently in touch with what the concerns of the community on, and concerned about how much the cost of the changes and where the money would come from need to be more transparent, and that council should consider delaying the Prune Alley plan. All right, so those are the only two comments that I have from anyone. Real quick, so Ingrid, did Ms. Compton want to provide public comment? Is there a way?
No, she was participating in the CARES funding discussion in a few moments.
Okay, yeah, can we get her on? Unfortunately, she cannot be in the room.
Yes, she's going to go ahead and call in.
Great, thank you. And just for anyone listening, there's someone who wanted to provide public comment or comment regarding an upcoming discussion item, and due to the OPMA Act, we're not allowed to have anyone in the council chambers. Anyway, so I apologize for the disruption. And I do not see anyone else online who'd like to provide public comment. So it is now 9:13. We have a minute and a half. Mr. Stevens, Mr. Watson, is there anything else before we get into the public hearing that either one of you would like to bring up, or we can just pause for a minute?
Pause.
And we're pausing for a minute. Not literally, just. And thank you, Mr. Watson, for the vaudeville act you going. That's great.
Just trying to be entertaining.
Tip the waitstaff well. I think Victoria's looking. All right, so it is now 9:15. We will open up the hearing. Public testimony will be accepted. This is public hearing is adopt an ordinance of the San Juan County Council granting a non-exclusive franchise for water distribution facilities, authorizing limited use of public roads right away in San Juan County, Washington to Orcas Landing, Inc. Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Hughes.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, so let me just give you a thumbnail of what we're talking about today. So this will be the third time we've talked about this ordinance, but in a nutshell, OLI is the ordinance basically would be a franchise agreement with Orcas Landing Inc. For their system and for their system that's in the right-of-way and any future work that would be performed in the right-of-way. So this follows on our standard form of agreement. It is somewhat unique in that during the
Uh, Okay. I would just like to say thank you to staff and OLI for the patience in working through this agreement, and I'm glad we're able to move forward. Park and Ride has been very successful, and so thank you to all of the many partners that worked with the county to move utilities for the construction of the Park and Ride. So with that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Much appreciated.
Good to see you, Richard.
Thank you, guys. Continue your hard work.
Thank you. All right, so the next discussion item is COVID-19 coronavirus emergency response update and also coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security funding. So if it's all right with council, I'd like for us to go through our weekly updates, I guess starting with Mark or Kyle, and then I want to talk a little bit about the new funding that's come into the county, if that's all right. So Mark, I'm going to be wrong here, but would I have you starting out or Kyle?
You'll have me, since Kyle is on a much deserved little vacation, getting some rest and relaxation.
Great, thank you.
So, good morning, council. Thank you. I'll try to go through here fairly quickly. I know you have a busy agenda. So give you some statewide numbers and then some local perspective. So statewide, Washington State is up to 87,068 cases of COVID-19. That's through midnight last night. There have been 7,478 hospitalizations and 2,113 deaths in Washington State. Locally, we are holding at the 32 cases, so nothing has changed there. That is 16 on San Juan, 13 on Orcas, and 3 on Lopez. However, I will say that we need to remain vigilant and keep our guards up. We are working with multiple close contacts of some confirmed cases that occurred off island. The close contacts are residents of this county, and those folks are in quarantine and are being tested. And so it's just a very good reminder that we need to keep our guards up. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick and kind of go through some of the risk assessment numbers with the council. And so... And so hopefully you guys can see this screen. And so I'm going to hop over here to the risk assessment. Assuming you can see the risk assessment dashboard here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I have up the regional numbers, but let me just talk about statewide real quick. So statewide, the state is meeting, I'm only going to say 2 out of the 4 because they haven't redefined their testing over the past week. So the state meets 2 out of the 4 on the risk assessment. Regionally, we also meet 2 out of the 4, and then locally we meet 4 out of the 4 on the risk assessment. And so statewide, the rate per 100,000 of newly diagnosed cases over the prior 2 weeks is at 68. And then regionally here, you can see we're at 39.1. The other item that where the region doesn't meet it is the percent of positive tests over the week. We're at 2.2, whereas statewide it's at 3.1. If I was to click just on San Juan, you'll see that we meet all 4 of those. And so we've had 0 over the past 2 weeks, and we've had 0 positive tests over the last 4 weeks. So it kind of gives you an idea on that. I will say that we need to really take a really close look at the 5 counties. And the reason I think we need to remain vigilant is that you'll notice that 39.1 goes through September 17th. So again, this is where the last cases have been confirmed, and you'll notice that it starts to go back up, and it's creeping back up. and I actually looked at all 4 counties besides San Juan, and all 4 counties are seeing a slight uptick in cases in the last several weeks. And so something we need to keep our eye on, and is this could be attributed to potentially folks being indoors more now with the smoky weather, the rain, fall starting, school back in session for some of the private schools. So it's again a very stark reminder that we need to remain vigilant in our efforts to eliminate and or reduce our close contacts, particularly indoors with our non-close family members. And so it's something that we need to be very conscious of. And so if you look at that, it's something that we'll keep our eye on, and the state's keeping our eye on, because I think the state has indicated we're kind of at a crossroads right now. And again, we are seeing more people moving indoors. We're seeing private schools back in session. We're bringing people back together from outside of our family units, and we need to remain vigilant and keeping that 6 feet of distancing and wearing our masks. And talking to my counterparts in some other jurisdictions in our region, the uptick in some of the cases they're seeing are directly related to large family gatherings. So families coming together, cousins, aunts, uncles from around the state and maybe even from out of state, and doing gatherings. And so a lot of them are attributed to that. And so this is not the time to be doing that. I know it's been a long haul, but we also know that is what is causing the uptick in cases. Would also want to look at our healthcare readiness system. So this is something that, again, going back to the original goal until we have a vaccine, is to keep that curve flattened and to not overwhelm our hospital system. And so looking at our region, this is the region again, 74.6 of the beds are currently occupied in our region through September 28th. And you'll notice that Whatcom County, and this has been true for the last, and I'll click on Whatcom County so you can see on it, they've been bouncing above 80%. The majority of these cases are not COVID related. This is for other reasons. And so our hospitals are seeing increases in other cases. So heart attack, strokes, other reasons to be in the hospital. And so really key to making sure that folks, we avoid COVID illnesses, and just click on the licensed beds and you'll see that as a region, we're only at 1.6. So obviously it's other reasons why our hospital beds are being occupied, and the less people that are in there for COVID, the better. The last thing that I'll just touch on and then take any questions is a real strong push for folks to get their flu vaccinations. We really want everybody to get their flu vaccinations. As you know, flu and COVID will have similar presentations for symptoms. So fever, chills, body aches, so on and so forth. And we want to minimize that disruption, I guess is a good word for it, and not have the flu going on at the same time of COVID going on. We also know as flu season approaches, the flu will cause more hospitalizations, which will also stretch our hospital system. And so it's really important that people get their flu immunizations. We're encouraging everybody to contact their medical provider, medical home. Many of our medical providers are doing a significant number of flu shots now, and we encourage everybody to get in there and get those flu shots. We are and will be messaging out a variety of flu drive-through clinics in October and early November, and those will be on San Juan, Orcas, and Lopez Islands. So we are working hard on that with our medical partners. We're having great collaboration with all of our medical partners, including the clinics and pharmacies, to work together to provide some drive-through opportunities. And again, messaging will be going out on that hopefully later today or later this week. And so a lot of effort being spent trying to ensure that we have access for folks to get their their flu immunizations, to really see a sharp increase in the number of folks getting their flu immunizations, to help minimize the number of people with flu and the complications from flu as we enter the flu season later this fall and winter. So with that, I'll stop and answer any questions that the council may have.
Mr. Watson?
Nope, no questions.
Ms. Stevens?
I don't have any questions. I'm glad you pointed out, Mark, about the slow trend going up. I think it's important to watch those things as we go forward, especially as we start moving indoors.
Yes, thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. Mark, just one question on, let's see, one of the graphs that you pulled up, the first one on the dashboard that had the current status, and it had the one line through the daily testing. What is that about?
So let me just, I'll pull my screen up again so that folks can see it. Okay, so this average daily testing rate per 100,000 over a week. So the state had a different metric there, and it was changed, and they haven't defined what the new goal is yet. And so until that goal is identified, they're not recognizing this. So this is showing the number of tests per 100,000 over the past week, and this is for the 5-county region we have up here. If I was to look at it statewide, select all of the counties, you can see where we're at statewide. We're at 157.8 tests per 100,000 over the past week is what the statewide number is. And again, they haven't defined the goal yet, so we don't know if we're meeting it or not. This is just showing how many tests per 100,000 are being conducted. Another way to look at it is here, and it kind of shows you how the tests are being performed. And you can see early on when we were struggling with lab capacity and with the test kits, we were averaging 60 tests per 100,000. Now we're at 160 tests per 100,000. So it kind of gives you a picture of what's going on.
Great. And then one final question, Mark, and thanks for this information. Do we have is there any predictions from the state on, when like a second phase might come back, or is there enough data to even think about that?
You mean as far as the state?
I mean, the second wave, or we've kind of gone, seems like we're at the end of the first batch of this. And
yeah, let me open this up.
Short of words on that, but
Yeah, so I don't think we've ever left. If you're talking about the disease itself, we never actually left the initial phase. So we had the peak back in end of March, beginning of April. We went down. We started to reopen. We spiked back up. We are coming back down, but we are still in that initial, I would say, disease outbreak. And so I don't know if you're referring to that, Councilmember Hughes, or if you're talking about moving between the phases.
No, sorry, I was meaning, the disease itself. Had we come to a point when the first part of it had been maybe finished, and then we had to be careful that the second wave of it didn't come back. But you answered the question that we're still in the first part.
Yeah.
We haven't really had a.
Correct.
I think it's interesting. We've been 6 weeks now without a case in the county.
Yeah, so if I was just to select just San Juan County, you can see here that you go back into this is the rolling average. I think the case was confirmed and symptomatic on August 9th. So that was the last confirmed case here in the county.
Yeah, I think to Mr. Stevens' point, it's really great that we've been able to be a relatively healthy and safe place, but I just hope everyone continues to keep their guard up and be vigilant on mask wearing and hand washing and social distancing. So thank you very much on that. So Mark, do you have any other comments on the first part of the COVID update?
I do not, unless there's any other additional questions.
Mark, this is Dr. James, and would you mind if I made just a couple more comments?
Go ahead, Mr. James.
So, Mark, thank you so much for the robust discussion of the numbers. There are two things coming up that are very concerning. One's Thanksgiving, the other one's Christmas. What we know about this disease in our community specifically is that it happens when friends, neighbors, or relatives come into your home and you let your guard down. I'm actually very worried about Thanksgiving and about Christmas, and I think that we're not going to have a vaccine, despite what some national leaders say. The likelihood of a vaccine prior to the end of December is extremely unlikely. There will likely be two towards the end of December and in January. Both the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine are likely to become available in that time frame. However, those vaccines will likely take 3 to 6 months to have much impact on our lives. So I think we're going to see some relief from this. There are a bunch of detail there, but in fact, we're not going to see much relief from this probably through March or even next summer. So between now and that, the elimination of the herd susceptibility, the community susceptibility to this, the propensity for this to cause huge outbreaks, until we eliminate that, we're going to continue to ride this roller coaster of cases coming and going, and it's going to be directly proportional to how much we liberalize contact between people. It's basic biology. We have very successfully, I think, and much to your credit, gentlemen, been able to limit business in a way that effectively controlled the disease and then liberalize that at the right time and in the right way. And in doing that, I think we provided as much business opportunity as we can. The coming challenge isn't going to be about that. There aren't levers we have to manage the risks that we're going to see in families as they gather for Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's going to be a very substantial and very real risk. If I could say anything to the public, it would be, this is the year to hunker down in your nuclear family and share everything you can in some other way. Traveling is a risk for us. Although things are looking pretty good in Washington right now, that's not true nationally. That's not true globally. We just passed 1 million deaths globally for this disease, and several 100,000 in the U.S. alone. We've behaved really responsibly. Other people in our nation have not. Even other people in our state have not. And we've done the hard things, and it's protected our community very effectively. But until vaccines are available and until they're proven safe and effective and distributed, we're not going to be out of this pattern. I believe, I'm working closely with the superintendents, I believe that we're going to be opening schools gradually and systematically and carefully to in-person education. I think that, combined with the 2 holidays coming up, are very risky situations, and we're going to have to keep our hands on all the methods of control that are available to us. And some of these, you as political leaders and me as a medical leader, are not going to be able to control except from the bully pulpit. There aren't the kind of rules we can make that will help people be more safe. We have those in place already. But I hope that we can begin to think about how to message the upcoming holidays in a way that inspires people to have fun and be with family, but in a way that's safe. And I think that's going to be our next big challenge. The schools have been very, very responsible. I think they're doing a great job. They're finding those little ways to make things work. On Lopez, there's a kindergarten teacher that put all of his materials in the back of his truck and goes door to door, teaching kindergartners. It's an impressive story. People are finding very creative, very effective ways to live life as fully as you can live it. But this fall is going to be very challenging. It's not just flu. There are 5 or 6 other viral diseases that are going to be in our community. They're going to be hard to differentiate from this disease. I think our clinics are going to be pretty overwhelmed, and hopefully we will not allow flu and COVID together to eliminate the possibility of having an effective emergency care and medical system. Those are the challenges we face in the next few months. They're very substantial. But I think, we have to look back at the success we've had. It's extraordinary, our success. I think I haven't had a big enough opportunity to thank our business leaders, our political leaders, and individuals in our community for that success, because that's where it comes from. It comes from wearing the mask. It comes from staying home when you're sick. It comes from all the things we know work that our community has embraced. So thank you for all that you've done in your leadership, but also know that I believe the hardest times are going to be the end of November and the end of December this year of this entire effort. And we need to begin to think creatively and diligently about how we can get through those times safely. And there are not, that I know of, effective levers for us to use as political leaders or as medical leaders. It's going to be about providing information and people doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. James. All right, is anyone else on staff wanting to mention anything about the current update for COVID? All right, Mr. Thomas, is it possible to have you and or Mark Tompkins to go over a little bit of the second round of CARES funding that we've got and where we're at with that?
Yeah, so I'll go first because there's actually 2 pots of money received by the county from the second round of CARES funding for local government. So one was an allocation of $343,000 to what I'll call general government. And then on the health department side, they had a like amount, $343,000 that came to our health department from the State Department of Health. So I'll let Mark talk about that. So I guess a couple things happened. So that $343,000 that was awarded for general government, one of the things that happened, and this is in your packet, a request went out to county departments asking if they had additional CARES funding eligible expenditures. This is the stuff that we received back is detailed in a staff report that Mylene put together regarding CARES Grant Round 2. I'll actually let her speak to it because I put out the request and then Mylene Nesty put together the staff report, so I'll let her speak to that. But in general, what folks are looking for are technology to allow for better interface with the public, looking for technology to allow remote working. They're looking for physical barriers for public and staff safety, and a number of other things. Though there was a larger request for improvements for the Emergency Operations Center. It would be a addition to the Marie Bowe building at the fairgrounds. This basically furthers the discussion about creating a unique EOC Operations Center for the county. So that's really an overview, but it's all detailed in your packet. In addition to the department requests, I think council received a number of a couple requests from folks concerning the food bank or the resource centers. And then there's another discussion we'll have today regarding the $157,000 of CARES funding that went into a business grant program through EDC. And I know Mylene and Victoria will want to talk about some potential changes to increase, hopefully, the consumption of those dollars. So those kind of the 3 parts of the general government part, and I'll let Mark, of course, speak to the health part.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I don't know, Rick, if you want me to do this now or you want to have council ask Mike questions about the general government first.
What do you think, council? Would you like to hear it all and then ask questions by each new grant?
Let's hear it all.
Yeah.
So as Mike has indicated, we as a health department received a specific allocation of CARES of the 343,000 for the costs associated with our response. I am actually working on a budget amendment that will detail the costs associated with that. The majority of our expenditures have been going into current expense. I will be working with Mylene and Tara on a budget amendment that will show this 343,000 going into current expense to cover the costs associated with our response, which includes costs for the our on-call help that's assisting with the case and contact investigation, cost with our health officer, supplies, and received a report from Terry yesterday that the cost just in staff time that has been coded for COVID response from the health department actually exceeds 343,000. So that will be going to cover those costs that were not budgeted in 2020, obviously. So that'll be part of our amendment process, and we'll be using that 343 to cover health department staff time associated with the response. So that would be our case and contact investigation, the health officer, the work with our vulnerable population groups, and so on and so forth. And so, again, Tara's put together a report for me that outlines that we've had more in staff cost than the 343 already coded to the COVID response.
All right. Thank you, Mark and Mike. Mr. Stevens, do you have a few questions?
I'm just wondering in Mylene's report, when she just says recommend that we take action at least on some of these things, is that because the total requests are 40,000 over?
If I may, Mr. Stevens, the reason I'm recommending that you take action today is that a large part of the request is for replacing or upgrading HVAC systems to provide filtration within working areas. One of the things that Dr. James talked about is the fact that people will be spending more time inside during the fall and winter than was the case in the summer, and so we want to make sure that our inside areas are healthy. Unfortunately, in order to get this work completed and paid for by November 30th, we need to start right away. According to Greg Sawyer, facilities manager, who has gotten the estimates for the HVAC units, they say that if they are given the go-ahead now, they can get it all done by November 30. But we would need to let them know. There have been a couple of changes since the report I sent to you last week, and if it's okay, I'll share my screen and show those to you.
Yes.
Here. So one of the changes is initially we had believed that existing package units or PAC unit HVACs could not be upgraded with filtration. Turns out there is a filtration system that will work with those, and the system itself is fairly inexpensive, about $1,200 with tax, but there are 16 of them that could potentially be replaced, so that's a total of $19,000. Another change is a very small change. We got exact numbers for the assessor's barriers, came in less than we had put in the spreadsheet. One of the issues that I've talked to Tara Anderson, grants manager / senior budget analyst, about is the eligibility of some of the products, the projects. On the HVAC units, we were not sure that replacing entire units, which is what is needed with some of the older units, would be eligible. She talked to her contact at Commerce today who said that they would be okay to replace if they serve areas that are related to the response, so, and they are old enough that it doesn't make any sense to merely upgrade them. The ones that we're looking at to replace are in the Orca Senior Services Center. It serves senior areas, kitchens, health providers, so those would be eligible for replacement. And the other one is at Sheriff's Dispatch. Again, that is a response area, so we believe that those would be eligible. The other expense that we were not sure would be eligible is building a storage facility for the EOC. And the indication there is that is not eligible. They are not generally approving capital projects such as that. It has to be, it's, Tara, you might want to add more. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. And regarding the storage facility, that particular one, they were very uncomfortable with for a number of reasons. One being just generally capital projects are frowned upon. Two, that the work would have to be complete and in use and serving the functions of the EOC by November 30th, which is a very tight and supremely optimistic deadline. But this is the one that the concern that was the most telling was you would need to be able to demonstrate that there was no other alternative to this. And so since storage units are rentable and there's other access for that type of a thing, that is a box that we just could not check with the storage facility. And so I do not recommend that we fund that project.
On the other hand, the generator project, if that makes sense to go ahead with without the storage, is likely to be approved because that is serving an area which, while it's not actually actively in use now, would immediately be called back into use in the case of a surge. Presumably that could be used for distribution of supplies. So if the total requested was almost $400,000, but if you take out the storage facility, which we do not believe would be approved, the total is $302,000 requested out of the $343,000.
Mylene?
Yes.
So under this scenario that you've just played out, does it, would that allow us to provide some funding to nonprofits potentially?
If you approved everything here except for the storage facility, you would have $40,000 left, yes.
And is CARES funding, for food banks or family resource centers, that is an acceptable use if it's already been booked but prior to the end of the CARES program time?
I'll defer to Tara on that.
Yes, absolutely. We need to document the activity clearly, but items like, food distribution support, economic support, there are some clear areas that CARES funding could provide.
And is technology something that can be used by one of the nonprofits? So being able to serve people from home or something during COVID? Or
I'd have to look at the specifics of that particular one to identify it, but in broad terms, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that clarification.
So, Mr. Hughes?
Yes, sir.
So at that 302 level, there's sufficient room to fund the food bank request that I think was provided to you and others this week or late last week.
Okay.
I think it was 25,000.
This is Mr. Watson. I don't recall seeing a food bank request, so.
Neither do I.
Oh, good. I thought it was just me.
No, I was starting to look it up, but I didn't get any food bank requests. And I think I don't know, I'd like to see the request because I think all our food banks could use something.
Exactly.
So actually, and I apologize, I did forward it to staff. There was a joint request from all three food banks, $5,000 for Lopez and 10,000 for San Juan and 10,000 for Orcas. My apologies, you did not see that.
Well, I just don't remember it, so I might have seen it.
I know I didn't see it
Right.
because I asked the question during a meeting yesterday when they said there might be additional funding, and I was like, I don't know where it's coming from.
So I have other questions too.
Okay, Mr. Thomas, would you forward that information to council?
I'm doing it right now.
Yes, Mr. Watson.
So a couple questions. Yeah, I didn't really think much of the whole storage unit construction. Certainly, I think we could obtain a shipping container and put it out at our new storage yard a lot cheaper than building a platform and storage units on the fairgrounds, especially for something that is long-term storage and just needs to be dry. So my other question is, I was a little surprised with the sheriff's request for video conferencing system. Why can't they use Skype like everybody else, and what is different from their needs that Skype doesn't satisfy?
Ron, are you on the line, or Tim? I can't answer that question.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was just what was requested.
Yeah, so I mean, if it's like equipment to support them doing more Skyping, then I don't have a problem with that, especially in the satellite sheriff offices. But I would assume they already have Skype capabilities. But
And I think that is the case. They're looking for some large monitors, and let me find that request. I'm going to stop sharing so I can look for something on my computer.
Right. Okay. All right. So that was my main question. And the extensive HVAC request, again, just points out the challenges of us theoretically being responsible for far too many physical buildings. So I think our strategy of trying to do facility consolidation, again, is reinforced by this latest request. And I appreciate all the work that Greg put into this. But again, I think it's a symptom of a underlying problem that we are faced with. So I look forward to the facility consolidation discussion.
Good morning. The sheriff is here.
Oh, hey, there's Ron.
Yes, so it is using our Skype. What we don't have is the webcam or a larger monitor in one of the interview rooms or in each of the interview rooms to utilize. So we'll be utilizing the Skype technology or probably the Microsoft Teams that we've gone to.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, this is nothing new. We're not going with an outside system or anything.
Right. Yeah. Well, it said create a video conferencing system, and I'm going, wait a minute. Don't we have one?
Yes, we do. We do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Ron.
All right. Thank you.
Those are my questions / statements.
Jamie, do you have any questions?
Well, I understand what Bill is saying about too many facilities, but I believe that that's fine, and we need to have that discussion and start moving. But between now and whenever that happens, we need to be responsible for the health and safety of our employees and citizens who are using those facilities. Also, I took a look at that request, and I would feel I don't really have opposition in theory, but I'd like to see a more formal request because the request says, for example, it doesn't really say, it's not really definite on how much goes where. It's just an example.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Sawyer is online, and I think he could answer Mr. Stevens' question.
Good morning. This is Greg Sawyer, Facilities Manager. Sorry, I've been challenged to remain connected, but I think it looks stable. Speaking to Bill's concern and Jamie's question, the units that we're looking at retrofitting and or replacing are in all but one instance in buildings that we would most certainly be keeping. So the courthouse isn't going anywhere in our building inventory. The Orca Senior Center likely isn't going anywhere in our building inventory. There were units proposed into the annex, and that's a question that is yet to be answered. But those units were just the retrofits. They weren't the total unit replacements. Most of the work, Jamie, is all designed for air purification. So the building science is pointing towards electronic filtration and different forms of sterilization, be that with ultraviolet lights or peroxide. There's some that are using ozone, although that's already being identified as perhaps not such a great plan. None of these units are using ozone generators. They're all UV lights and electrostatic filters.
Thank you, but I was saying I think we need to do some of these things until we come up with different ideas for our building inventory. Thank you.
Yes.
So for council, are you able, do you want to go through and discuss some of these requests today, or have a week or so to think about them and make a final approval on the next meeting? I know we're getting really tight on when the money has to be spent by. I would support looking at approving at least some of the items individually today, but what is council's thought?
I have a twist for you to consider as you look at postponing. So the bids that I have been getting, all of the vendors are telling me that their schedules are filling up rapidly. So right now, all of them are scheduling installs in November. There's no work that I can have done in October, so it's already close on timing. The longer we wait, we may find that they are unable to complete what we are asking them to complete, and we would have to then start making a prioritized decision on which units we could successfully get done. But right now, both companies that are bidding are telling me, if we choose this week, for sure, probably early next week, perhaps, and they'd be able to fulfill whatever requests we threw at them.
Thank you, Greg. Council, what are your thoughts? Jamie.
I think we should go ahead, and particularly if we now that Mylene has clarified that, so we're on that storage unit wouldn't really qualify. So we're under the budget, and this is what the departments are requesting to be able to conduct business in current conditions. It's not all health and safety, but being able to do business under the current conditions that don't seem to be going away for quite a while.
Great, thank you, Mr. Stevens. Mr. Watson?
Then Mr. Stevens, make a motion.
I move approval of the use of the CARES money as proposed by the departments, excluding the storage facility for the EOC.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the department request for use of CARES funding minus the EOC second proposal for storage. Did I capture your motion, Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
since that would mean we'd have about 40,000, not quite 40,000 left. And is there a way we could get something a little more formal from the food banks? And maybe everyone doesn't feel this way, but I know I've been on a couple calls, and we're kind of running out of money.
No, I wasn't really anticipating us to even discuss that today, to be honest with you. A question came in about that, was there available money with this second round of CARES, and I hadn't even completely gone through everything that was set up. So yes, I would expect us to get more detailed requests from anyone. I didn't even know if there was an interest per se on or money available to actually be able to do that. So it was more, is council interested in working with some of the nonprofits if there's extra money?
So might I suggest we authorize Mr. Tompkins for a specific amount of money that he can then determine to, allocate out as needed to food banks?
I think Mr. Stevens just asked for more information.
Well, I was saying a more formal procedure or request, and as you said, but I think maybe where we're all going is, are we interested in doing it this way? And it seems like we are, but maybe Bill's idea is pretty good. If we just authorize the amount, then it could start to go to work.
Right. So
the only thing I was waiting for before we go there is that there's a presentation from Victoria Compton, or at least there's going to be some information about the 157,000 that hasn't been fully utilized. So I wanted to see how much money might be available and what the EDC thought we should do with the remaining money, because that could open up for nonprofits as well. But either way is fine.
Well, so what I'd like to make a motion then, Mr. Chair. I move that we allocate $30,000 and authorize Mark Tompkins, right, to utilize that funding to satisfy funding requests from the 3 island food banks.
Second.
Mr. Watson, can I add a friendly little amendment just to make sure that the money qualifies for CARES spending? I mean, I know that's implied,
Certainly.
but
Absolutely, yeah, totally was my intention.
Is that all right, Mr. Stevens?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to authorize Mark Tompkins, Health and Human Services Director, to allocate up to $30,000 for qualified CARES spending out of this new recent CARES grant. Does that meet your motion?
For food banks.
Sorry, for countywide food banks.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Any other questions? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. And council, is it all right at this point if we have Victoria Compton from the EDC give us a quick, and Mike Thomas, an update on the status of the 157,000 that we authorized for small business grants?
Yep, fine with me.
Yep.
Or do you want to
Good
take
morning,
a quick,
everybody.
go ahead,
Oops,
Victoria.
sorry. Good morning, everybody. It's Victoria Compton here on the phone. Sorry, I had incredible tech challenges this morning, so I'm sitting in Ingrid's office today. So just a quick update. The CARES grant, the San Juan County CARES grant, we don't have enough applications to use up all the money, and I think part of it has to do with the fact that the Working Washington grant came immediately before it, and we have had a limitation of businesses to have 1 employee. So what I'd like to propose is that we extend the deadline, eliminate that 1 employee requirement, and also potentially have nonprofit and for-profit childcare entities be able to apply for any funds that are in the pot. And if it's interesting to you, we could also run the food bank and Family Resource Center applications through our process.
Well, I don't think the food bank part really would matter since we've just
Would fit. Okay. Yes.
And asked our staff to execute that. But what? I mean, that's interesting to me, Mr. Thomas. I mean, what do you think?
I agree. Leave the food banks out. Yeah, I mean, Victoria obviously has her finger on the pulse. I'm definitely intrigued by daycares. That is an incredible obstacle right now for families. So I think that would be a good addition to eligibility.
And Victoria, just to clarify, when you say a requirement for one employee, so you're meaning you would want to open it up to businesses that are just owned and operated by an individual and don't have any employees. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. So we had sole proprietors that we basically had to disallow, and it would be nice to allow them to participate. And then there are partnerships and 2-member LLCs. All of those were originally ineligible. So it would be nice to open it up to them.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes, sir.
Victoria, of the 157 allocated, how much do you think's been consumed so far?
About 40,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you have a lot of applications?
Sorry. Actually, we didn't. We had 10. 2 of those were ineligible with the current guidelines. 8 of them were eligible, and so if we gave them the maximum grant, that would be the $40,000. Some of the applications for Working Washington were ineligible, so if we had them reapply for this grant, we would easily, and with additional sole proprietors and partnerships and 2-member LLCs, we would easily be able to use up the fund.
Ms. Stevens?
I've got a side kind of question that it kind of pertains to this. Trying to think of the big picture, Victoria, and thank you very much for taking that economic dashboard and making it, putting it in real terms, what it means for the county. It's been very useful. But I'm wondering, since there's rumor of continuing the unemployment bonus, but that actually hasn't happened yet, and who knows if it will, is that going to have an impact on employment? I mean, there's been the theory, I'll say, because I don't have any data, that it's, getting that $300 bonus for their unemployment, people are reluctant to go back to work. So that's my side question.
Yes. We certainly saw some of that for lower wage positions. But by the end of summer, we'd picked up, certainly some of those jobs. People did feel comfortable about going back to work. And part of that is we're in a very safe community, so it's a safe place to go back to work. But in terms of actual numerical data, I don't have a definitive answer for that right now.
I wouldn't have a problem with opening this up if you think we could get some more response.
We definitely can, and we've got those pent up ones from Working Washington that we could move over and let the Working Washington grants be larger, move them over, allow those 2 that were disallowed, and then open it back up for all sole proprietors.
Yeah, I mean, the purpose of those grants is to try to give, the small businesses a stimulus kick, right? And so certainly if we need to broaden or relax the criteria a bit, but as long as it's still going to businesses who need the assistance, I think that's the main key, and to help, keep our small businesses, weathering the current downturn, and being able to go forward. I mean, I sort of would frown or question if it's a construction company, because my understanding is right now construction is booming. Some scrutiny and logic would be applied, but I have no problem with maybe relaxing some of the criteria, again, assuming it still qualifies for CARES funding.
Yes.
And, Tara would be the expert or
Yes.
on that. But certainly that'd be better than letting the money sit there and not be used.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, may
Well,
I
and
speak? This is Tara, the
Yes.
ESC Finance and Admin Chief. There's opening it up to nonprofits would be in alignment with how other entities has handled the financial economic support portions of the CARES, and there's no conflict there. If there's adequate funding to support businesses that are, owner-operated businesses that don't employ employees outside of the owners, that absolutely also would be allowable under the CARES. We would need to amend, we could, of course, would need to amend our agreement. We have a sub-recipient agreement, so the nature of our relationship with the EDC for this is different than a normal vendor. So we could do that amendment pretty easily. My only thought would be to clarify, Victoria, that even if it's an owner-operated business, that business still has an EIN and a UBI.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that it really is a significant portion.
And if that is the case, then I see no conflict, Council, with the CARES funding.
Great, thank you. And Victoria, could you explain, I'd be interested, I really appreciate to your point and to Mr. Thomas's point about the childhood care, either schools or preschools or ECAP or whatever the programs are. I'd also be interested in the nonprofit on the community foundation sides. On the Family Resource Center sides. So is that what you were alluding to for nonprofits, or would it be strictly limited to nonprofits that are dealing with early childhood education?
So the CARES funding for this pot is specifically for economic benefit of businesses, so it's business funding, or directly for counties and municipalities' COVID expenses. So certainly childcare counts because employees need to find childcare to go back to work. Family resource centers could count because they need to support out-of-work workers or business owners who don't have income. So I think both of those would be allowable. And I guess, so was were the funds that were going to Mark Tompkins' efforts, was that just for food banks? Because if so, we'd be happy to help out with the family resource centers.
The money we just allocated was specifically for the food banks.
Just for food banks. Okay, good. Then yes, I would agree that would be a allowable use of this fund if Tara thinks so too.
So let me, if I can summarize, and please anyone correct me if I'm mistaken here. So we're asking to extend the granting period, asking to expand the requirements to allow owner-operator or sole proprietorships. We're looking for nonprofits that provide child care, early childhood development care, and community foundation, family resource centers that would qualify under assistance for small business.
Yeah.
Is that a good summary?
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Well, and we can't extend the deadline too much because we still have a CARES funding deadline criteria in there too.
And again, and just for clarification, the money has to be spent prior to the date, correct?
Yes.
This is Tara again. The money has to be spent for sure. When we originally contracted with the EDC, we did not have our own extension on the CARES, so I think that we could amend their contract to the end of October without any difficulty.
Okay.
All right. Well, it sounds good to me. Thoughts for either entertain a motion or thoughts for comments?
This is Jamie. I just had a quick comment in that, just so we don't get too confused, but I believe when we've done our food and rental assistance, it's gone through the resource centers. I know on Lopez, the Resource Center is running the food bank is kind of the hub for the food bank. And I believe on San Juan, the Resource Center is the same, and I'm not sure on Orcas.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but it's dedicated funding for the food bank versus other services that the Family Resource Center provides.
Yeah, okay, good clarification.
So in this case, it's separated. The food bank is a separate entity, and the Family Resource Center sends people to the food bank, but they operate as separate entities. So the food bank would be one entity, and the Family Resource Center would be the second.
This is Tara again. It's my understanding, for the sake of efficiency, that we can utilize existing contracts with the resource centers for distribution of CARES funding to the broader community. So that would, I assume that that's how we would handle the distribution of food bank funds. And then I also wanted to mention, and I don't have hard numbers for you in time for this meeting, but it's possible that additional CARES funding will be freed up as well, because the FEMA requests seem to be going well, because of the additional Department of Health funding, because of the public health CARES money that has all taken pressure, and in large part because of our ability as a community to keep ourselves safe and avoid a surge scenario. Some of the projected costs there we are not realizing, and so I hope to have hard numbers on that by the end of the week, so that further, to see if there's further funding that could be provided to the community. Doesn't necessarily wouldn't necessarily have to go through the EDC. If that becomes available, we could use those existing resource center contracts.
So our next council meeting is October 13th. So I don't think we can make a decision after that date and still get things spent by the end of October. Just FYI.
Yeah, my thoughts on that, Mr. Watson, or Councilman Watson, is that these community, the community resource centers and those nonprofits that are serving the community, they've already incurred those costs. They've already spent that money, and if we find that we do have extra money that there's an interest in pushing out to the community rather than giving back to the state, then we could use costs that had already been incurred.
Right. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. I would entertain a motion if there's an interest in one.
You want me to do it, Jamie?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll take a shot at it. Mr. Chair, I move that we amend the existing contract with the EDC to broaden the qualifications for applicants to more fully relinquish funds within the parameters of the CARES funding for business support.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for extending and broadening the contract with the EDC for use of the $157,000 in CARES funding for broader business support. Do we, as a question, do we need to add the nonprofit component to it for education? And
I'm just going to leave it nice and broad, and then Victoria can service the best people that come to her.
Okay. And did I summarize your motion adequately? All right. Is there any questions or comments regarding this motion?
No.
Nope.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much to council and the auditor's office and staff for bringing something forward and for us being able to act on it in a very quick way. And also, Victoria, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This
Thank you all.
So
10:26, is it all right? Back for. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Before we move on, so Mr. Thomas, I believe then we'll actually have to update the contract, and does that have to go through council?
Trying to remember what we did last time. I think you gave me authority just to sign it, which I did.
Okay, great. Yeah. So you'll update it and re-sign it then.
The subsidiary agreement, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify on how the logistics was going to work out.
And Mr. Thomas, if you wouldn't mind just forwarding it to council whenever it's modified, that would be great, just for our reference.
Happy to do so. Yep.
All right, it is 10:27. Is it all right that we take a break until 10:40?
Okay.
All right, thank you.